Massive spoilers for Ironheart if you haven't seen it yet. Go watch it. I was pleasantly surprised to see Mephisto in the ending of Ironheart. I never thought the MCU would do it, would introduce him. I mean, fans have been speculating about his introduction for years now. I remember the WandaVision theories. But I think this placement here, in this show, is probably the best. Mephisto is able to bring together larger themes of the show and dissect the beating iron heart of what makes this main character tick. Let's talk about it. If we were to discuss the main theme of Ironheart, I think it is relevant to begin with greed. Now, I think greed is a loaded term. Many people view it as a bad thing, mainly since it connects to the seven deadly sins. But I would argue that this is a bit reductive. As the GOAT himself once said,
Greed may not be good, but it's not so bad either. You humans think greed is just for money and power, but everyone wants something they don't have.
the desire for something out of your reach is not negative, it's just human. But they can become negative in excess. In other words, it's okay to want things, that's normal. But to want something too much, to the point where you're obsessed, that's bad. So is excess want what makes greed bad? Honestly, I don't really think so. For two main reasons. Firstly, the excess of want is arguably one of the main tenets of Western society. We are born and raised to always want more food, more people, and especially want more money. And the pursuit of those things are rarely, if ever, seen as bad. A business owner can get into the game alone for money and build a multi-million-dollar empire, and almost everyone around them would start calling them a hero. They would make entire documentaries and write books about how amazing this one person picked themselves up from the bootstraps to become the person they are today. Society as a whole seems to have no real problem with greed. And secondly, that excess is not necessarily born of anything bad. Yes, someone can want something because they're vain, but other times they can want it for their own personal and tragic reasons. For example, someone can want a lot of money to save a loved one. In other words, excess want can be born from noble purposes. So, if that's the case, what's the problem here? And how does this connect to Ironheart? In the show, its protagonist Riri and its antagonist Parker, or the Hood, are two people who literally made a deal with the devil in an effort to satiate a need they had. But I would argue both of these needs are noble on their surface. The Hood was a kid when his mother died, and then shortly after, his own father kicked him out of his house, pushing him away from the world he was supposed to inherit. Now all he wants is access back into that world that was supposed to be his in the first place, and a bit more while he's at it. Riri is much more complex. From the very beginning, Riri herself says what she wants: to continue the Stark legacy and build something iconic, show the world who she is, and prove that she can be just as good as her predecessor. Eventually starts to show when she speaks of her mother, and finally opens up and reveals why she decided to make the suit: to keep them safe. That night, when she lost her stepfather and sister, it changed her. Their loss broke her on a very deep level, leaving scars in her mind, which I would argue has manifested in severe anxiety. Riri says she wants to be rich and successful and the next Tony Stark, but deep down, all she really wants is her family, and her suits is a way to keep them tight. So from all of this, am I arguing that her deal with Mephisto to bring her sister back was actually good? Well, no, because the true evil of Mephisto's character is an evil hidden in the passion of greed, the corruption of self. Going back to what I said before, yes, it is true that the Western world has adopted a greedy ideology and that wanting more can be heroic. But the moment that becomes a problem is when you let that excess corrupt your character and judgment. There are so many millionaires who exist who reached their success by being truly evil people, ripping off their employees or by lying to the people to get what they want. A case study that comes to mind immediately is Elizabeth Holmes, a woman who wished to become a billionaire, and therefore began a company that could diagnose patients with a single drop. A process that, if true, would essentially revolutionize the entire system. Elizabeth fits both categories very well. Someone who holds the American dream philosophy and who held a truly noble cause to help people. But the problem here is the tech never existed. She lied the entire time. Her entire business was a fraud. and she knew it. And throughout the entire ordeal, she lied to everyone, worked her employees to the bone, while keeping them in fear, and used her technology on actual patients, knowing damn well it didn't work. This is what I mean when I say the corruption of self, because I have no doubt that Elizabeth had good intentions, but in her effort to make it work, she put so many people's lives at risk. And this corruption is what we see in Ironheart. The Hood's journey to achieve his dream of being rich was obviously illegal, but it also starts to change him. I do believe that a part of him actually did value loyalty and family, and was willing to break the rules, but not do anything completely morally corrupt. But as the show goes on, his values only get worse. He's willing to let Rampage die, and he's willing to throw away his entire crew if it means he can achieve his goals. But something I find really fascinating is that this moral degradation was not entirely his fault. Mephisto was mentally and physically forcing his hand, causing him to change for the worse. That is the true evil of Mephisto. A trickster demon, yes, but also an entity willing to sneakily invade your thoughts, to corrupt your morality, until you have any semblance of who you once were. And this is what we see with Riri. In many ways, Riri was a broken woman. Someone with incredible gifts, but who was made a prisoner of her own turmoil, which led her to want to hold on to what she had as hard as she could for as long as she could. Failing to realize that this mentality was not only hurting the people around her, but herself as well. She keeps her mother in the dark for most of the show, thinking that this will protect her from her life. But this only makes her worry even more. She tries to help Joe, but this only pushes him further down the last path he ever wanted to take, being his father. And then things actually get better. She's able to talk to her mother about her problems, and she, her mom, and others help build her a new suit. She tries to help Joe again, and they come to a sort of rocky understanding. And by the end, she beats Parker. You would think this would be the happy ending, the place where she can finally get better, where she is finally able to let go of her past and look to the future. But Mephisto won't let her. Not to say that it's entirely his fault. After all, he just worked with what was already there, but he was able to play into her insecurities to make himself a deal. He uses Natalie against her to remind her of what she lost and what greed could get her. By the way, I actually think he was the one who made her disappear in the first place, but that's whatever. She was finally on the precipice of letting go of her past, a moral failing which causes the suffering of the people around her. But Mephisto was able to forcefully bring her back into that mindset by dangling the return of Nat, regressing her back to what she used to be for his own ends. And what those ends are still left to be seen. But I am a fan of this show now, and I am excited to see where it goes. Anyway, that's everything. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Peace.